Okay, so the next thing we'll do is we'll start modelling the site terrain topography work. To do that, we'll use the mesh tool, and before we do, just make sure you are in your navigator, and we haven't changed here from using the project map settings of the navigator. So in your navigator, we're just on -1 AHD, so stories, -1 AHD, double click on that to make sure you are in the AHD stories. So everything we do now will be referenced from Australian height datum. So to put in the terrain topography, we'll click into the mesh tool, have a look at some of the settings at the top, the layer, choose an appropriate layer. So mesh site sounds like an appropriate layer to put all this site work into. The geometry method you'll probably want to use would be the first one there, the polygon shape, and the structure, we'll leave it at structure of earth, and this first top surface only with skirt solid body. Now I'll draw a mesh shape around including the footpath areas. So to start with, I think the orange shape here is the road. I guess that's indicating the curb line or the nominal curb line. We'll keep it nominal for our purposes only. Like I said before, in reality, a proper survey might have been created before you'd start this job, but we're just tracing off this map for now. So click in this end of the road or curb line, and then we'll come down, try and get it, in actual fact, get it parallel to this property boundary that you've created by hovering over the top of that property boundary for a while and then pulling back away until you see the parallel icon come up. So when you get that parallel, you can, even though it might not quite match with the map we're tracing off, it's better to be parallel to our side boundary in this case. So I'm clicking at that point. You shouldn't need to worry about parallel. Oh, okay, so this is quite not parallel to our bound, because there's our site boundary, so that would be parallel, but the street curb in reality looks like it might even be bent, is it? Yeah, there is a bit of a bend in the middle, I think, which we'll ignore. So we'll just come down to that intersection through there. We could have truncated that little corner there too if we wanted, but it wasn't. I don't think we'll worry about that. Once again, I'll hover on this side boundary till it lights up blue, and then you can come across parallel. And this time I think I'll get it to come parallel until it lines up. So come and hover over here, so you can pull across, and I want two things. I want parallel and the horizontal intersection. So the horizontal from the other end point. So we're coming across from there and parallel until we get that intersection just there. It looks like it's trying to pick up another angled intersection from that other point as well, so I want to make sure I get that one there. And then I'm going to close that off. So then I've got, if I go back to my arrow tool, I've created a mesh over here around that shape. So that's the shape that I'm after. Look, I don't even mind if you took that all the way up to the top there. I was just trying to also give you some practice at getting these inferred extensions from different points with the parallel and the inferred lining up with that other point here as well. If you didn't quite get that, have another practice at it. Otherwise, it's not critical. Critical point at the moment is just that you've got a mesh roughly laid out on that shape around the street curbs. Okay, so the next thing that we'll need is we'll need to trace off these contour lines through here. So particularly this one that I'm hovering over at the moment and this 9 metre one down here. So I'll use I guess a polyline tool. It doesn't even need to be a polyline tool. I'll just use I think a standard line tool. Layer, once again, I think we might go for a site layer. We might even leave it on that mesh site layer because it's going to be associated with this mesh in the long run. and this is the edge of my mesh up here, so I've got to go a little bit past there probably, and just trace over that 10 metre contour line until it traces through from one side of your mesh to the other. So something like, I'll show you something like this, and really it doesn't need to be terribly accurate as well. We are just tracing off a map here. Once again, I'll say it again, in reality you'd probably be working with a surveyor's AutoCAD file that you could be, well, you wouldn't have to trace over, you could make use of that file imported straight away. But for our purposes here, different approach, just tracing off this map. And my mesh finishes, so I'll just keep going through here a little bit. No more accuracy necessary than that. Now don't escape when you get to the end of the line. You either double click your last point or right click and click OK. Alright, so that has just left a line that I've just highlighted going through my mesh. I'll do that once more, another line tool, and I'll do that for this 9 metre contour over here in a couple of places, I think. So we've got a 9 metre contour line doing something like this. Now, like I said, don't get too hung up on the accuracy of this. It's not worth it. Like you can imagine, there's no hard edges when you're talking about soil and site work. In fact, you might go to a lot of trouble to get something deadly accurate within a millimetre, and that might be the reality at one time of the day, and then someone comes and kicks the soil and it's wrong for tomorrow. So don't lose sight of the level of accuracy necessary for what we're doing here. And I'll just trace down through here until we've gone past the edges of our mesh. So either double click your last point or right click and OK. So they're the two main, that's the only one I need up here. It looks like we might need another 9 metre contour down here as well. Although, yeah, we might put that one in as well. So one more, starting from a little bit outside the mesh, roughly following the shape of what we need, right click and OK. Okay, so the next step now is we need to add those lines to our mesh. Now, so this is a little bit tricky. You have to have your original mesh selected and then click and activate the mesh tool while that mesh, it's the mesh that I have selected, then click and activate the mesh tool while that original mesh has been selected, and then hold your space bar down until you get this little magic wand. And then when you get your magic wand, you can click on the line that you drew. Okay, so I'll just click out of that to show you what's happened through here. Oh, sorry, I get a dialog box popping up through here. It was on my other screen, I didn't see it. So when this dialog box comes up, we want to add new points, and we want to fit those points to the ridges of the original mesh. Okay, and then we click OK to that. And what we've done is, if I just click back on the arrow tool, just escape, deselect the mesh. If I select this mesh now, you'll see that those points from that line have been added to the mesh. In fact, we could select that line now all the way through and delete it. So the line has been deleted and all we're left with is the extra points on that mesh. So let's do that again. So once again, the mesh has to be selected. So hover over an edge or near the mesh and click. By the way, if any of you are having trouble selecting things in the middle of objects, not on the line, it's probably that you haven't got this quick selector. Is that the quick selector? The little horseshoe magnet icon up through there. So with that selected there, you should just be able to click on top of things and it should select the mesh as you saw on my screen. Now the mesh needs to be selected before you re-enter the mesh tool. Now while that original mesh is selected with that mesh tool activated, press and hold the space bar down, get the magic wand and click on a part of that line. It'll then select all of the line there, but we're going to add new points, fit to use at ridges, and press OK. And then, like I said before, if you want, you can go back to the arrow tool and select just the line and delete all of that line. If you wanted to tidy up, you're then left with the mesh with these line points added to it. So once again, to show you for good measure, have the mesh selected. While the mesh is selected, activate the mesh tool, hold down the space bar and click on the line that you want to add to that mesh. Add new points, use ridges, OK. And we've added those new points there as well. Okay, so I'll just deselect that. I'm going to do a save here and now, and we'll stop the video, and when we come back, we'll have another look at what we're going to do with the heights of those points.